Viewers, before we start, drop your location and local time in the comments because it's always fascinating to see just where these stories find you. Now picture this, the Texas sun is only just cresting over Silver Ridge, warming the dew off the pastures, birds chirping and cattle grazing lazily in the distance. Marcus Thornfield is easing back in his porch chair with a mug of black coffee when a white Mercedes SUV growls up his gravel driveway. The sound cuts through the still morning like an electric guitar in a string quartet. Out steps Karen Blackwood, HOA president and self-anointed queen of the community, dressed like she's about to argue a Fortune 500 merger instead of harassing a cattle rancher. Her heels click against the stones so perfectly in rhythm, Marcus half expects a drum line to join in. She clutches a manila envelope like it's the nuclear football, and from the way her chin tilts, you'd think she was about to crown herself governor of Texas. "Mr. Thornfield," she announces, her voice brimming with the authority of someone who once won an argument at a PTA meeting and never forgot it. She waves toward his cedar fence, sturdy, simple, hand-built to keep spooked cattle from wandering during storm season. But to Karen, this fence is apparently an existential threat to property values. She recites a covenant section number like a magician pulling rabbits from a hat, then unveils the punishment, a $250,000 fine plus 7 days to tear the whole thing down. Marcus stares at the paper, not rattled, but quietly cataloging all the ways this official document reeks of intimidation. No appeals clause, no hearing date, and certainly no proportionality. Historians still argue whether ancient kings levied more outrageous penalties for fence posts or for wearing the wrong color tunic at court, but Karen's invoice would have made them jealous. Tom Carter, the nervous HOA secretary sitting in the SUV, winces as if even he knows this is ridiculous. Karen, though, smiles like she's just conquered Rome. Marcus thanks her politely, his voice calm, his eyes drifting toward the closet inside the house where an old black suit jacket waits in the shadows, shoulders still carrying the memory of a federal judge's robe. Karen mistakes his composure for resignation and drives off, leaving behind only dust and the faint odor of expensive perfume mixed with diesel. Marcus returns to his porch, sipping what's left of his coffee, thinking less about the absurd fine and more about how long he's hidden the truth of who he once was. His cattle chew lazily, unaware that their fence has just triggered a showdown destined to outgrow the boundaries of Silver Ridge. Marcus spends the next day pacing his study where shelves of federal reporters and dusty law journals have been ignored for years. He runs a finger across spines like a pianist warming up before a concert, each title whispering reminders of a different life: cases on civil rights due process, the Constitution's stubborn insistence that even the smallest voice deserves to be heard. His fence might be cedar and nails, but the structure he's about to raise is legal granite. That evening, Betty Martinez shows up with a casserole, the kind that could stop a stampede, and the blunt honesty of a woman who has seen too much HOA drama. She warns him that Karen has called an emergency meeting complete with a slick lawyer named Raymond Cole from Austin. According to neighborhood chatter, they plan to seize his property if he doesn't cough up the $250,000. Betty's eyes gleam, daring him to do something about it. Marcus smiles faintly and tells her maybe it's time he dusted off old habits. The next day, he drives into town, stepping into the HOA office, a space remodeled to look like City Hall, though it has less actual power than a lemonade stand. Inside, the records reveal what he feared: incomplete financial books, enforcement minutes, scribbled like afterthoughts, and an architectural committee consisting of Karen plus 2 friends who probably couldn't spell jurisprudence if you spotted them half the letters. Marcus photographs everything, every procedural shortcut, every self-serving edit to the covenants. It reads less like community governance and more like a playbook for intimidation. Scholars debate whether medieval guilds were ever this petty, but at least those guilds built cathedrals. Karen's crew builds paperwork palaces designed to collapse on anyone who questions them. Tom Carter finally corners him outside, wringing his hands like a choir boy caught smoking. He confesses the board never questions Karen Raymond, tells them what to believe, and they nod along. Marcus nods back gently, asking what Tom thinks might happen if someone legally challenged all this. Tom admits he doesn't know. The uncertainty lingers like thunder over open pasture. That night, Marcus sits on his porch as the sunset paints the horizon copper. He can still hear cattle lowing, fences creaking, and the faint hum of a community trembling under bureaucratic fear. The fine notice remains on his table, but it has lost its sting. For the first time in years, Marcus feels the robe on his shoulders again, though it's only memory. Tomorrow, he'll walk into Karen's carefully staged meeting not as a victimized rancher, but as Judge Thornfield, quietly preparing to remind Silver Ridge what actual justice feels like. The Silver Ridge Community Center hums with tension-folding chairs squeaking as nervous residents shuffle in. Karen presides at the front table, flanked by her loyalists and Raymond Cole, whose silver hair and expensive suit scream big city expertise, even if his arguments drip more intimidation than law. He launches into a slideshow about protecting property values, citing cases so irrelevant they might as well be about parking disputes in ancient Rome. Marcus sits quietly in the back, thumbing a worn copy of federal rulings like a farmer checking seed stock before planting. When Raymond proudly references Morrison Ver Hill Rest, Marcus hides a smile because that very case dismantled the kind of shortcuts the HOA is bragging about tonight. It's like quoting a cookbook recipe while forgetting it says "do not eat raw chicken." Residents shift uncomfortably. Betty raises her hand and asks why a simple fence merits a $250,000 fine. Raymond dodges. Karen beams, and Marcus knows the moment is ripe. He lets them bask in their hollow authority until his phone buzzes. The federal courthouse has granted his temporary restraining order. Timing could not be sweeter. As Karen calls a vote to pursue foreclosure, Marcus rises slow and steady, pulling a certified order from his jacket pocket. His voice carries calm authority, decades of courtroom gravity. As of 1 hour ago, the Silver Ridge HOA is under federal injunction. All enforcement actions are suspended. Silence falls like a dropped gavel. Karen's face cycles from fury to panic. Raymond fumbles with his phone, and Tom Carter finally exhales, as though he's been holding his breath for years. Marcus reveals his identity, retired Judge Thornfield, and explains that due process, constitutional rights, and the Eighth Amendment are not optional no matter how shiny the binder of HOA rules. Residents erupt, telling stories of playgrounds torn down and mailboxes fined into oblivion. Tom resigns on the spot, followed by Jennifer Walsh and David Morrison, leaving Karen alone at the table. The empire she built on fear crumbles under the weight of actual law. A week later in federal court, Judge Peterson issues a permanent injunction. The board dissolved finances, audited restitution ordered. The HOA had siphoned hundreds of thousands from residents through unconstitutional fines, and now every cent must be paid back. Silver Ridge transforms. Tom becomes the new board president. Betty spearheads workshops on residents' rights, and neighbors replace fear with cooperation. Karen quietly sells her house and vanishes, while Raymond's law firm faces state bar scrutiny. Marcus keeps ranching his cedar fence, still standing, no longer a symbol of defiance, just a barrier that does its job. Yet every morning when he sips coffee, that fence whispers a reminder: freedom like a fence line requires maintenance. Historians may debate whether power corrupts or merely reveals, but Silver Ridge now knows what happens when fake power collides with the real thing. The pace softens here, like twilight settling over the fields. Marcus no longer needs to raise his voice or wave documents. The community itself has taken up the responsibility of guarding its rights. Children play in yards unshadowed by petty threats. Gardens bloom without fear of citations, and neighbors trade advice instead of complaints. The cattle graze peacefully, unaware of the battles fought in their name. But Marcus feels a deeper calm watching them now. Justice, he thinks, is not thunder or spectacle. It is the steady rhythm of lives lived without fear. The black suit jacket hangs again in his closet, silent yet ready, though he hopes it will never be needed. As the stars prick the Texas sky, the night air carries no trace of tension, only the low song of crickets and the assurance that for once peace rests on firm ground. And so the story closes like a gentle door at dusk, leaving only the quiet reminder that even in the smallest communities, freedom endures when good people stand tall.